What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and another album review, and this is a comeback album. Been a little while since we've talked about a comeback album, brand new to the channel. I can't remember the last one I did. Probably the Nocturnus AD album from 2019 was the last major comeback album that I touched on, but this one, 25 years since this band has released any new material, we are talking about the comeback release from Canadian speed/thrash metal legends Razor with their album Cycle of Contempt. I was excited when I heard that Razor was finally releasing new music for the first time in 25 years, and we get a new album, and now they're on Relapse Records, which is really, really cool. For those who don't know who Razor are, Razor, like I said, they are Canadian speed metal and thrash metal legends. They were part of the early Canadian scene, along with bands like Voivod, Exciter, Sacrifice, Anvil. Like, they were pretty much right there at the start of that speed thrash scene in Canada. What I think separates Razor from the other bands is that Razor, while they started off a little bit more speed metal on their first album, starting with Evil Invaders, gradually up until you get to Violent Restitution, they were gradually getting much more thrashy. Then they solidified into being straight up thrash with no speed metal at all on Violent Restitution. And their whole 80s run is just filled with cut after cut after cut, no pun intended for a razor's edge. But, of course, some turmoil has happened in the band. You know, Sheepdog McLaren was out of the band by the early 90s, and now we get their current vocalist, I forget his name off the top of my head, Bob Reed, who, to his credit, does a solid job filling in the shoes of Sheepdog McLaren. But for me, I'm a bigger fan of Sheepdog's vocals than Bob's, but Bob definitely has his own take vocally with Razor. Why don't we check out this album? So we kick things off with Flames of Hatred. The guitar slowly comes in with chanting before the guitars start to get into like sinister thrash territory. And then the riffs and the verses definitely harken back to old school 80s Razor, pretty much staying in that vein even through the choruses. And then you get like notable bass lines popping up towards the end of the track before it just thrashes to its conclusion. And I can't help but be a fan of this second song titled Jabroni. So I guess Razor, all the guys in Razor are wrestling fans, I'm gonna assume. Probably not, but you never know. But yeah, they have a song called Jabroni. Let that sink in. Starts off with this really cool opening riff that immediately reminds me of Slayer. I mean, then again, I've always viewed Razor as like the Canadian Slayer because they're so similar to one another in terms of intensity and sinister nature of the guitars. So, yeah, pretty much throughout a lot of this album, and I'll touch on them when we get to them. But yeah, cool opening riff that reminds me of Slayer, and that intensity is felt pretty much throughout the entire song. And even a tremolo riff shows up in the chorus, which was cool. And then things kind of slow down a little bit, and then you get some like old Metallica riffs coming in the bridge. And then we move on into Off My Meds, which starts off with this like thrashy tremolo riff and into the skank beat right away. And then the riff changes, and it's like it changes from tremolos to fast alternate picking, and then the chorus here gets very anthemic with gang vocals and even another tremolo riff. And up to this point, the most intense song, and a lot of these songs are short, sweet, and to the point. A Bitter Pill, opening riff. This opening riff in particular kind of feels like either something Testament would have done or something Evil would have done, especially on Hell Unleashed. Afterwards, the riff gets back to that like Slayer yet classic Razor feel. Then the song a couple of times will have like a sudden stop. I guess that was for dramatic effect, and It was odd at first, but I understood why it was done. It was to like make you guess what was coming next, and what was coming next was thrashing your fucking face off. Crossed, the next track, you get this like scratchy, palm-muted guitar line to start things off, and the best way to describe it, if you hear the beginning to the song Train of Consequences by Megadeth, it's basically that. It's like scratchy, but it's palm mute, but it's done in a thrash sense on this track as opposed to what Megadeth did on Train of Consequences. But yeah, we start off with that, then into some wild riffing just flying through your headphones or speakers or whatever you're listening on. The choruses and the verses actually bring in a little bit more melody to the guitar riffs. And even the vocals change on every single verse and chorus, and they feel much more punky. Like, although it does sound like there was different vocalists coming in, I couldn't pinpoint or find if there was any guest vocalists, but it sounded like there was guest vocalists on this song. Or Bob Reed just is that good at switching up his vocal style. Just, let me snap. On a whim. There. Fucking finger snap. Anyways. Then we get to First Rate Hate, which this is probably the one song of the album that feels like something close to the first album, Executioner's Song, because that album was much more classic metal, speed metal oriented than thrash. This song has a lot of classic metal riffing, a groove that just gallops along very much like Iron Maiden. Like, this is almost like Razor's attempt at doing Iron Maiden. And that's pretty much felt throughout the entire track for the most part, while the vocals still maintain aggression. The chorus is simple and direct, but it's packed with a punch, and even the bass has a lot of moments of shine in the choruses. Then you get to, now I haven't talked about the leads, but I will say this lead stands out as being one of the more melodic leads of the album, and it just flies through perfectly. And then the ending of the song, like the final minute, just punches you in the face with back to that thrash intensity to conclude. Then we get to the longest track of the album at a little over 5 minutes, the title track, Cycle of Contempt. Catchy opening riff that feels like Metallica again, and the bass is coming in chugging along, and then the guitars, like the riff changes to chug along with the bass as it starts off on more mid-tempo note. Then you get this like dramatic shift with the progressions before the bass and the drums pick up the speed and then brings forth brutal thrash intensity once more. And everything about this track is just unleashing anger. And even the guitars, like there are moments on this song where the guitars just go into all sorts of different directions. Chromatic parts, tremolos, melody, just all over the map. Then we get into the song Setup, the following track. You get a riff here that almost sounds like something that could have been on the first Haunted album, which I'm a big fan of that album, so it's not a bad thing. I actually think it's a boost for me. And I absolutely love this opening riff. Once again, anger in the verses. However, the choruses on this song is very, very empowering to me. And even breakdowns come up here, and we got some catchy breakdowns on this track. Punch Your Face In. Now, the next two tracks definitely feel like tough guy posturing things or getting ready for a fight, but the way they thrash on top of that vibe is so infectious. Like, Punch Your Face In, awesome bass line to lead us into more intensity. And then you get another anthemic chorus, and then All Fist Fighting, the following track, kind of follows a similar vein. It starts off with a cool bass line, and that just leads us into a thrash fight. And the vocals actually on this track have a tinge of melody to it, almost similar to Lemmy, especially in the verses, with another anthemic chorus. But then again, Bob Reed's vocals feel like a more aggressive Lemmy on this album for the most part. Darkness Falls, the penultimate track, melodic guitar intro, which was very different from everything else about this album. Starts off with melodic guitars as the drums are slowly building things up. Then it fades away, and then into classic Razor face-punching riffing we go. More anger-filled verses with a chorus that's about self-awareness about the world. The lead starts off on this track with a little more atmosphere before it gets into like dark shred. And then we get to the final track, King Shit. No build up at all, just in the thrash we go with no fucking bones about it. Spoken word verse at first, well, most of the verses are spoken word, which was something unique and different, but as the verses progress, Bob's voice slowly transitions back to normal. Gang vocals return in the choruses to add more intensity and almost like a live feel. Even a little movie sample is heard here and there. And then the ending might be considered cheesy to most. I loved it because I thought it was funny. Funny little ending sequence to the track. But overall, the leads on this album just rip and shred and melt your face. Like, yeah, there are some different leads that'll come in here and there. Like, some leads will bring in a little more melody. Some leads will bring in some taps. It just kind of goes all over the place in terms of, like, thrash lead guitar work. Now, of course, the production. I think the production on this album was, like, the perfect mix of modern production and old school production. Like, the drums feel old school, but the way it's all mixed feels like a modern mix. Like, everything is pretty much even kiltered. The bass is very prominent on this album, but it doesn't overpower the drums, the vocals, or the guitars. Like, everything is perfectly even. So I would say in terms of production, one of the best produced albums I've heard this year, because it sounds organic, but it has that modern philosophy to it in terms of the mix. Vocally, like I said, I'm a bigger fan of Sheepdog McLaren's vocals, but Bob Reed, this was actually my first time really hearing Bob Reed's vocals, because I didn't check out the album Shotgun Justice that came out in 1990. Well, I wasn't born in 1990, but I haven't checked out that album yet. I probably will now, but I actually like Bob Reed's vocals. Like I said, he sounds like a pissed-off version of Lemmy on a lot of these songs. The riffs fucking thrash out, some catchy moments here and there as well, but this album is just all about setting one mood, and that's anger. Like, then again, you're in Canada, you don't have any reason to be angry, you get free healthcare, but yet this band, really throughout their whole career, they just sound so fucking pissed off. And I love that about Razor. Like, Evil Invaders, Violent Restitution, those are amazing albums. This, on the other hand, I know some people might say, oh, you're saying this because they've been gone for 25 years, but actually listen to the album. I am giving this 10 out of 10. This is one of the best thrash albums I've heard this year. This is up there with Schizophrenia and a couple of other thrash albums. Vicious Nights, like, this is up there in terms of the best thrash album of 2022. Holy shit, does this album deliver intensity beyond anything. Buy this album. And I know I'm going to after I get back. Hell, it could be at the record shop whenever I go to my trip to Tennessee this weekend. And I'll buy it there. But if I don't find it, I am definitely buying it after the vacation, because this is a must-buy. Get it now. Blah. But anyways, what did you guys think of Cycle of Contempt by Razor? Let me know in the comments section below. And until next time, horns high. See you guys later. Wake up.
This is interesting.
And wow. I can go ahead and confirm.
I was the revealer. I flip Levi's card. There's my revealer card.
I was hoping this would happen. Okay.
the heck happened?
Alright, alright, alright.
What in the
Oh,
world?
God.
Misappropriated.
Okay, I was the robber, and I took Seth's revealer.
What the heck?
So Seth and I are safe. Bad news for everyone else.
And I'm a prince again,
I literally was squinting because I'm like, that looks like a revealer card, but wait, I'm the revealer.